Broadcasting Corporation. Ito ang Radyo Agila. DCEC 1062 sa Mega Manila, WIN 1080 sa Northern Luzon, DCEL 1260 sa Southern Taga, DYFX 1305 sa Visayas, at DXED 1224 sa Southern Mindanao. Ito ang Radyo Agila. Mabilis, malakas, pumapagaspas. Mga bagong kaalaman sa siyensya at teknolohiya. Alamin sa programang Pinoy Scientist. Tuwing linggo, alas 5 ng hapon hanggang alas 6 ng gabi. Pinoy Scientist. KBP Best Science and Technology Radio Program. Pinoy Scientist. Dito sa Radyo Agila.
So happy Sunday, February 4. This is Pinoy Scientist on Radyo Agila, DZEC 1062. So good afternoon, February 4, 5:02 p.m. This is your host, Dr. Guido David.
At ako po si Doc JD, bumabati rin ng magandang hapon sa ating lahat, Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. Doc Guido, kumusta?
Kumusta naman? So our guest is here, pero we will have an intro lang muna. Pero so kumusta naman, Doc JD? So to everyone, yun nga, malapit na yung araw ng
mga puso
at bagong taon sa
mga Chinese.
Yes.
Sa February 9, and then dineklara ito na walang pasok po, pista opisyal, Doc Guido, no? So mahaba ulit ang weekend. Bago lahat, Doc Guido, babati muna ako, no? Ako na muna babati para tuloy-tuloy ka na. So gusto ko pong taos-puso po ang pamilya namin na nagpapasalamat po talaga sa lahat ng sumuporta po dahil sa yumao ko pong ina na si Mrs. Belenci Jonella na taga San Vicente, San Pablo City, Laguna. Lahat-lahat po, hindi ko na po kayang masabi ang mga pangalan, subalit mula sa mga doktor, sa lahat po ng doktor, nurses, lahat ng mga nag-help po sa amin, lahat po ng pumunta, lahat din na hindi pumunta na talaga namang nakiramay po. Ako po ay taos-pusong nagpapasalamat on behalf of my family, the Jonella family. So yun po ang akin pong mensahe at hindi ko man po maisa-isa ay talaga pong kami lahat ay nagkaroon po talaga ng pasasalamat po talaga sa inyong lahat. So yun. So yun, Doc Guido, ang aking pasalamat dahil nga sa pagyaon ng nanay ko noong January 24. So, ang sunod ko naman gagawin, Doc Guido, ay ang sabihin, kasi medyo humaba ito, dahil andito pa rin tayo sa salitang Tagalog, balikan para di malimot, at ang atin pong laro ay patuloy pa rin po. At ito po ang mga nanalo: Demet Quasay, Sally Abara, Debbie Hendrickson, Mary Ferrey, Romeo Lopez, Rod Aidas, Conrado Adalia, Jean Gocon, Arlene Castillo, Hilda Lanes, Eileen English, Melanie Toquero, Angelito Galang, Gilbert Yanco, Chalin Velasco at si Malin Triñanes. Ang sunod kong babatiin pala ay ang aming naging caregiver kasi special siya, si Arnie Soriano. Nag-birthday siya kahapon at kaibigan ko rin na si Christian Ballesteros, binabati ko rin. By the way, Doc Guido, gusto ko din sabihin sa iyo na nag-fun run kami kanina at ang aking sinalihang category ay body run. Ibig sabihin, may kasama ako doon na estudyante ko dati, si Michelle Reyes. 10K ang aming tinakbo kaninang umaga dyan sa palaro ng fun run ng 7-Eleven sa Manila. At si Tanya Enteria na kaibigan din namin ay tumakbo naman ng 32K. Sa Abacus family, ito talaga yung mga runners na grupo ko ay si Daryl and Luz na tumakbo rin ng 32K at si Liza na tumakbo naman sa Iloilo kasi sabay-sabay yan tatlo, Iloilo, Manila and also Cagayan de Oro for the 7-Eleven fun run. So yan po ang aking mga bati. Doc Guido, pasensya na medyo mahaba. At yes.
Walang problema, Doc JD. And kasama ako sa mga nakikiramay sa iyong mother. Alam ko grieving ka pa ngayon. And ako babati rin naman. Of course, ako rin, I had a friend, classmate who passed away last January, si um, engineer Jill Beltran. So um, may also rest in peace. Ganun din sa mother mo, Doc JD. So of course, life is precious, life is short, and let's enjoy our loved ones while they're still there. Um, Di natin alam, di ba? And of course, batiin ko rin yung mga friends ko sa Twitter. So kasama dyan yung mga, well, I mean, yung mga nag-greet ko sa Twitter. Actually, guest natin kasama yan sa mga Twitter friends ko. Pero, but the others, si Doc League, at of course, naging guest ko lang just last month. And then si Plank Epoch, Raya 2.0, I Am Negatron, Chewy, Gigi, Lay Sanpi, Franel, Manuel Teson, Joyce, si Brian Gonzalez, si Range, EJ, Bing Salvador, Bella, si Melissa, si Prey, Team Omnipoint, Doc Custers, of course, hindi na yan sa Twitter, pero si Doc Custer and si Dexter, binabati ka rin. And many other friends and family, relatives, students, faculty, too numerous to mention. So, ang topic natin today, I think is timely. It's about long COVID. And meron kang, ang ating guest, of course, introduce mo, Doc JD. I'm not sure kung nahabol mo sa poem mo si Dr. Roa, well-known pulmonologist sa Manila Doctors and other affiliates. So, ayun, Doc JD, you have an intro?
Naroon akong tula para sa ating panauhin at syempre, ang sabi mo nga, ang ating paksa ay Long COVID at ang titulo ko ay Long COVID, ating pag-usapan. Ganun na lang po kasimple. Long COVID, ating pag-usapan. Ngayong hapon ay huwag palampasin. Long COVID-19 ang siyang papaksain. Kahit medyo di na gasinong suliranin, mahalagang impormasyon ay alamin. Isang dentista ang ngayon ay bisita, pati molecular biologist pala. Dr. Johanna Roset po ang ngalan niya. Sobrang aktibo sa propesyong pagdedentista, ngunit abala rin sa marami pang advokasya. Tulad na lang ng pagpapaliwanag tungkol sa keto diet na medyo sikat. Mahalaga ang animal at plant fats, yung good fats, regulasyon ng carbohydrates ay nararapat. Subalit ngayong hapon ay iba ang ibabahagi tungkol sa long COVID natin na sinasabi. Kailangang maintindihan itong mabuti para alam ang gagawin ng mga sarili. Long COVID-19 ay masasabing suliranin dahil bawat karamdaman ay mahalaga sa atin. Kung mas malala ang naging COVID noon, kung iisipin, maaari ba na sila ang may sintomas ng COVID-19? Kaya pakinggan natin ang ibabahagi niya sa masa. Dagdag kaalaman para sa mas maayos na pagpapasya. Paggiting ko na rin ang pagpapasalamat sa kanya sapagkat kahit palinggo ay nagpaunlak sa imbita. Salamat po, happiness. So yan po at magbabalik po si Doc Guido at ako naman po ay magpapaalam. Salamat po.
Alam, Doc JD, at ang Pinoy Scientist will be back after these few reminders, so stay tuned.
EBC, Eagle Broadcasting Corporation. Ito ang Radyo Agila.
Ang oras na ito ay hatid sa inyo ng Cable Link, your link to a world-class entertainment.
Mga bagong kaalaman sa siyensya at teknolohiya. Alamin sa programang Pinoy Scientist. Tuwing linggo, alas 5 ng hapon hanggang alas 6 ng gabi. Pinoy Scientist. KBP Best Science and Technology Radio Program. Pinoy Scientist. Dito sa Radyo Agila.
This is Pinoy Scientist on Radyo Agila DZEC 1062 Mega Manila. We're broadcasted nationwide from Dagupan to Davao. So today is February 4, 5:11 p.m. and ang topic is long COVID. And before introduce to Dr. Jet, and we may be joined by Dr. Roa in a bit. O yan na, andyan na yung ating guest. Good afternoon, Dr. Roa and Dr. Jet.
Hi, Dr. Guido. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Rosette Jet.
Opo, good afternoon po, sir.
Yeah, we call her Dr. Jet for short. So ang topic natin is ano, and bago ka lang ano, I mean, simulan yung topic natin. Of course, pakilala muna kayo, Dr. Start siguro with Dr. Roa first.
Yes, thank you for the invite. I'm a pulmonologist and retired, but they asked me again to teach in UP. And so I've been, my advocacy really is tuberculosis, but when TB services shut down because of COVID, we actually initiated the first community isolation center for COVID with former Secretary Obial. And up to this time, I have patients who consult with me for long COVID.
Thank you so much for joining us again and for for accepting our invitation, Dr. Roa, and sharing with us your expertise. And of course, Dr. Jet, you're in San Francisco, tama ba?
Right now, yes,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm an oral pathologist by profession. I used to do research in cancer for my postgraduate studies and doing molecular biology. So ang ano ko po is usually mga sakit sa bibig, hindi lang yung mga sira ng ipin, but sakit sa bibig in general. Marami tayong sakit sa bibig kung titingnan natin na hindi nalalaman ng marami. And well, nagkaroon ako ng COVID in 2021, I think. And na-diagnose ako because we got locked down in Canada for personal reasons with my mom and stuff. And pareho kami ng mommy ko nagka-COVID. And initially, okay kami, nag-recover, very, very mild, parang sipon. Until a month after, ayan na, dumating na yung tinatawag nga natin na long COVID, na kung ano-anong sakit na naramdaman namin. And right now, I'm here in San Francisco trying to, um, waiting for a consult for a long COVID clinic and where they do, kung saan sila pinag-aaralan talaga nila ngayon ng long COVID dito dahil sa laki ng problema dito sa US and sa ibang bansa ng long COVID.
And sorry to hear that. And si Doc Jet, matagal ko nang kausap halos sa Twitter. I mean, almost during the time of the pandemic. And for a while, you were really trying to avoid getting COVID. And pero as fate has it, parang it's almost inescapable. Most of us get it. I've gotten it for sure. And I want to preface na I have a friend who just passed away, and I'm not going to be using my friend but it's as academicians, professors, doctors, we're curious about what happens, so that we can change the past, but we can change the future, or we can do things that will maybe protect us in the future. And yung friend ko is about my age. He's my classmate from high school. And the story is, and I'm sharing it on behalf of his family. So, noong December 2022, he got COVID for the second time. It was not severe; it was mild though. But on the second day of his COVID, um, he got a seizure while he was sleeping, and that was December 2022. And I haven't seen him since that time, because I think I saw him maybe January 2022, something. So at the start of the year. And throughout 2023, I was informed by his family that he had episodes of seizures while sleeping. And then, and they got the tests, and there was, I mean, they showed it to doctors, to neurologists, and they couldn't find anything wrong with them. I mean, we can't find anything wrong. I mean, we don't know. And just so happens na nung January, just a few weeks ago, while he was sleeping, his wife went out to, drive his kids to school. Pag uwi niya, he was already, you know, he had an episode, a seizure, and when they took him to the hospital, he did not make it. So again, he had no history of seizures, to the best of our knowledge. And the doctor said, na, they can't identify what it was. Pero it was a bit telling. Sila mismo nagsabi, I mean, the family, I mean, they're not, you know, they don't have, an interest in whatever, agenda or whatever. They don't have an agenda. Pero sila nagsabi na it was on his second day of getting COVID for the second time. So of course, for me, this renewed parang the discussion about long COVID. Pero let's start siguro from basics. I mean, siguro let's start first with Dr. Roa. Ano ba yung, I mean, at least for the listener, baka medyo puzzled sila. Ano ba yung long COVID, Dr. Roa? And you're a pulmonologist, so syempre, you've seen a lot of COVID cases, I guess.
Yeah, well, COVID is a so-called respiratory virus because it enters the respiratory tract, and then it goes to areas where you have the receptor, the ACE2 receptor. But the effect is not really clustered just in respiratory, but other organ systems are also involved because the receptor is found all over the place. It's in our body in most organs, and anything that continues to bother patients or may bother the patient again after recovering from the acute COVID and persist for maybe 2, 3 months is considered a significant manifestation that can be categorized as probable post-COVID uh, condition, long COVID, and uh, and so it's really quite heterogeneous. And I had a talk with Dr. Rosette, and she has a listing actually. Rosette, you have a slide prepared for this?
Opo, I don't know. I sent it to
Yes,
the email video.
I will share it, and I can share it now if you
Yes.
so
Yeah.
pero sige, give me some time before I can I was let me just set it up. So
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah. So when this came out, it was quite quite really bothersome. But we thought it would go away as COVID, you know, is expected to actually go away as most pandemics do. And and indeed, the count went down, but not really. It did not really disappear. In fact, the counts are still relatively high, and so this now is something like a chronic illness, not just an acute uh, situation after an acute COVID. Uh, Dr. Joseph, maybe you can describe what you have there.
yeah, and
Um,
yeah, before you talk, I think I've shared the screen, so I'm not sure if you can see it. This is it says long COVID symptoms and the impacts on numerous organs with different pathology. So Dr. Reset at Dr. Paul.
yeah, jet is fine. Yeah, because when COVID started, no, we all thought that this was just a respiratory virus, no. Ibig sabihin ng tinatamaan supposed to be baga lang. But like what Dr. Roa said, no, this is because the virus can actually attach to isang parte, kumbaga, isang very minute na parte ng katawan natin that we call a receptor. So this is called the ACE2. So the ACE2, maliban na lang siguro sa sclera ng mata or, enamel and dentin ng ipin, it's everywhere. It's all parts of the body. We have ACE2. So, because we have ACE2 anywhere, nakikita nyo ngayon dun sa slide, kahit anong parte ng katawan, pwedeng tamaan ng COVID. So, ang akala kasi ng marami ako nakakausap, no? Akala nila, pag sinabi mong long COVID, umuubo ka lang ng matagal, or yun na nga, hindi nila ma-relate na maraming bagay na ang long COVID, katulad yung napapagod ka. Like in my case, napapagod ako, mag-shower lang ako, napapagod ako. Or yung, um, yung puso ko, mabilis yung tibok. Pero lahat yun, walang lumalabas sa mga test. Lahat ng test ko negative. So, para akong normal. Minsan, may nakakalimutan ko yung mga gusto kong sabihin or hindi ako maka-form ng sentences. May time ng early on, nakakalimutan ko yung mga nangyari sa akin the day before or 2 days before. So, memory ko talagang tinatamaan. Tapos, pagkatapos nun, yung katulad ngayon, no, ang nangyari sa akin, I was perfectly healthy prior to COVID. Ngayon, ang liver enzymes ko tumataas for no reason. Hindi nila makita bakit. And the trend is going up. My platelet count, yung parte ng dugo na namumuo, yung responsable sa pamumuo ng dugo. Ngayon, tumataas pati yun. Kaya, yun yung mga nagiging problema ko ngayon. And this has been coming a year after ako nagka-COVID. And patuloy siya na hindi ko alam kung saan papunta. Wala siyang gamot. And then sa mga nakakausap ko, yung mga nagko-consult sa akin, nakikita nila yung mga ibang pasyente nahuhulog na lang basta yung mga ipin nila ng walang rason. Or nagkakaroon sila ng gum disease. May mga iba na bibingi. May mga iba, akala kasi nila yung mawalan ka lang ng pang-amoy. Hindi, may iba na bingi after COVID. May iba yun nga, yung seizures. That's typical. Ang nakikita nila ngayon yung mga magkakaroon ng yung mga symptoms ng Alzheimer's, for example, yung ganon. So, maraming simptomas na hindi namin ma-explain. Yung iba, yung immune system nila natatamaan. We had a case na chinek yung mga lymphocytes niya para siyang nagkaroon ng HIV, ng AIDS. Ganon kababa yung binagsak ng lymphocytes. And it lasted for a year or two. And up to now, they're still trying to recover. So, ganon kalaki yung problem. And ang nakikita ngayon sa states around the US, for example, around 30 million in the US have long COVID. Same in 30 million. And that's the US alone. And ang nakita nila, sa bawat time na magkaroon ka ng infection ng COVID, lalong tumataas yung chances na mag-develop ka ng long COVID or any disease that will result from COVID. So, kaya hindi siya ganun kasimple na sinasabi. Tapos masakit sa katawan, isa pa yon, para akong dinadaanan ng pison all the time. I developed psoriasis. So, iba nakikita, orally, nagkakaroon ng Sjogren's syndrome. So, nanunuyo yung mga bibig nila, walang laway. So, ang extent, hindi namin alam. Tinitingnan namin yung possibility, may mga papers na lumalabas na if you get COVID, medyo magkakaroon ng pwedeng magka-cancer. May posibilidad. They're looking into that. And it's a highly debatable topic right now na may nakikita kaming mechanisms for that. So it's really a wide extent of diseases na covered ng COVID.
Yeah, and it's I mean, that's a concern. Ako, I would admit, I got COVID nung 2020, I think 2022, sometime 2022. I know because nag-positive ako eh. And after that, I recovered fairly quickly. Mabilis yung recovery. Pero, I mean, there are some things that's not the same with me anymore. I mean, maybe I'm not experiencing as many symptoms as Jen is experiencing. Pero parang, I'm not the same. Initially, parang may konti akong back pains. Pag tumatagal, parang hindi ko kayang matagal na nakatayo. I didn't have it before. Of course, Dr. Roa, mahirap magsalita because tumatanda na rin ako eh. Baka nasa edad na ako. So, as a as an individual, parang hindi ko rin naman masisi necessarily yung COVID because baka naman tumatanda na ako, baka there might maybe another explanation. And I think marami ring ganyang cases, Dr. Roa, na he, hindi nila masabi for sure na this is long COVID, pero there's something. And uh, and of course, I have to bring this up because I have to be neutral or objective. Marami siyempre, hindi naman marami, pero may maingay na, I mean, very vocal group that's saying that this is the effect of vaccines actually and not COVID. And what do you say to that as experts? Let's start with Dr. Roa first and then before Jeff.
Yeah. Yes, ako Doc Guido, first time ako nagkaroon last December, and it's only one day of colds,
One
and then
day
it
lang,
went
okay.
away.
But you are
Now
vaccinated before that,
I'm
syempre.
I'm fully vaccinated with all the vaccines there.
And boosters, yes.
Yes. And well, maybe I'm also lucky because this variant now is not trophic for the lung. I mean, it stays here and it disappears with the immunity that I have. Uh, uh, Tough luck yung mga na hawa agad ng Wuhan wild type and the Delta. Oh my! But
Yeah,
the Omicron is much milder. But there could still be long COVID, particularly kung
right.
siguro nagkaroon ka dati and then you have an amnestic phenomenon with another exposure now. I just like to add to the data ni Dr. Joseph, a meta-analysis that fairly recent, last December, that look at cases, data, meta-analysis of studies that look at patients who had long COVID for 2 years already, 2 years, and then they found that the common manifestation of these cases who have been suffering for the last for at least 2 years is fatigue, cognitive impairments, yung di makaisip masyado, pain, roughly about 30%. And even anxiety and depressive responses are also common. Here it's like 13 to 18%. And sleep problems. So what is clear is there is persistence of some of the symptoms, and maybe it's creating some secondary manifestations like something psychological. But definitely that's still part of the concern that this could all be part of long COVID. And this has to be uh, dealt with because this will now be something like, as I mentioned earlier, a phase that now may become chronic. You see, I'm familiar with severe COVID that whites out the lung before, and we're so happy if it clears up. And we know it doesn't clear up that completely at the time of discharge, but good chance it will clear up almost completely in 2 to 3 months. But this thing seems to be persisting. And the only thing is most of these are symptoms and the pathologic, uh, the tangible things are not so easy to find uh, to to be the basis of since there are many theories, mechanistic theories, but of course we want to do more. But just the same, we still have this population, very significant number, as mentioned by Dr. Joseph, about 30 million Americans. And I have seen the statistics in terms of financial cost incurred because of that number of patients like this. I don't have data from the Philippines, but I think it's also quite significant.
Yeah, and before si Doc Chet jumps in, tanong ka lang, Dr. Roa, since you're a pulmonologist and you got COVID yourself, did you have your X-rays checked recently? Kunyari, parang just to check kung cleared na sila because you said sometimes it doesn't clear immediately or it takes some time.
Well, after that December COVID, I didn't have myself check anymore. I do have my regular check every year, not only X-ray but also CT scans, for the simple reason that it's free for me in my hospital, and and well, I didn't have anything there, and I don't expect to see anything as well because I don't have manifestations after that short encounter. Maybe
That's
I'm
very
lucky.
good. Yeah, that's very good. Maybe you're blessed. But I'd like to hear from Doc Jet about yun nga, and about yung theories na this could be um,
Yeah.
vaccine induced because there's a group and alam mo you're familiar with them because you're on Twitter, and
Yes.
they're blaming some of these untimely deaths and cardiac arrests on vaccines. And
Yeah.
I'll give you the floor to address those
Yeah.
their own point.
Well, to begin with, not long COVID symptoms and diseases that that come from COVID infection have been going on prior to the vaccines. In fact, yung mga nagmamanifest ng severe na long COVID had it worse when there were no vaccines. So sila yung mga talagang debilitated. And there are recent studies that show that people, although ako personally, I got vaccinated thrice and I still got long COVID. But the more you boost, especially if you use the updated vaccines, the risk for long COVID goes down to, I think, the latest research is around 30%, which isn't much, but still that's a reduction, a risk reduction. No? And ang parati kasi the studies that show na yung mga sa anti-vax, no, they always mention vaccines, but they never mention whether the person tested for positive for COVID or not. And if you look at dosage, because you have to remember that it's about viral load, kung anong naiiwan na virus dun sa katawan. And the vaccines that we introduce, hindi naman siya yung volume yung volume na na-generate niya. Really higher ang COVID infection compared to vaccines. Of course, we're not denying no, na meron syempre mga vaccine injury. Any medication will have adverse effects. I mean, wala tayong exception dyan. And vaccines are not exceptions. There are adverse effects. And yung mga nakikita nila, say myocarditis due to vaccination, usually temporary and nakaka-recover. Although sige, may mga vaccine injury, but definitely the way COVID has affected or affects an individual, ano yan that's been going on even before the vaccines. So comparing the two scenarios, alam natin na mas mataas ang possibility na vaccine ang nag-cause niyan. Na vaccine ng COVID ang nag-cause niyan kasi the rate of infection that we have now and the number of people who are repeatedly infected by COVID, regardless of their vaccine status, regardless of the severity of the acute infection, sila yung malamang sila yung mga nagkaka-long COVID pa rin. You can't discount the fact that people are now getting reinfected over and over again. And this increases the chances of you to develop long COVID at each reinfection. And even the WHO has stated that already. Na yun ngayon yung, in fact, yun na nga yung dangers natin ngayon ng COVID. It's not even severity of acute illness anymore. We've controlled that. Hospitalizations are down. Severe disease is down. But yung chronic effect, yun ang hindi natin alam ngayon. And that's not about vaccination anymore, especially if you consider that people are getting reinfected unknowingly and knowingly. So yun yung hindi natin alam.
Yes, and
Yeah, and yun na nga, like yung sinabi mo, sa friends mo, ganun, ang nakikita nila ngayon, yung malabas na recent studies, it's on a molecular level, yung damage. So capillaries, for example, yung mga maliliit nating ugat kung saan dumadaan ang oxygen, doon nagkaka-damage. Mitochondrial dysfunction, na yung parte ng yung mga kung yung very unit structure natin na supposed to be energy, ang pinoproduce ng parte ng katawan na yon. Pati yun nada-damage ng COVID infection. Kaya kami nang hihina, kaya kami hindi makahinga. So, on routine testing, hindi siya nakikita. So, katulad sa akin, lahat ng tests ko are normal. My pulmonary function is normal. My EKG is normal. Ang to the echo cost normal. So everything is normal, and that's not unusual for people with long COVID. The tests come, kaya ang hinahanap nila ngayon sa dugo, yung mga protina sa dugo, may nakikita na sila, and yun ang gusto nilang gamitin to diagnose long COVID. Kasi nakikita nila sa mga may long COVID, affected ang mga lymphocytes. Tinatawag nila, kumbaga, napapagod or nasosobrahan ng trabaho yung mga immune cells namin. Kaya ganyan na kung ano-anong nakukuha namin sakit ngayon na hindi nakikita on regular testing.
Yeah, and to add to that, Doc Jet, even before vaccinations came out, as you said, in 2020, I remember kasi since may mga nakilala akong reporters who were reporting on COVID. So one of the reporters I know, she got she got COVID, and yeah, she was seeing long-term effects, and that was even before vaccines came out. In fact, she made a group for that even before people were talking about long COVID. So they were already seeing long-term effects. And yung one of my also friends who got COVID, he was telling me that he's having brain fogs all the time. That he didn't have before he got COVID. Also, one of the other things na I mean, when yung those who are against vaccines mention is yun nga, if it's due to vaccines, but they don't mention kung ano type of vaccine. I guess they're not really aware, or I'm not sure if they're aware of that there are different kinds
I
of
think I
vaccines.
think I think people got scared because mRNA yung term eh. Akala nila they mistake it for mRNA for DNA, which are very different things. And akala nila na ma-manipulate yung katawan ng vaccine, which is totally different. The vaccines are there to trigger an immune response. Kumbaga, inuudyok na yung immunity natin. But
It's
that's
not
about
changing
it.
us. It's not
No,
changing
it's
our
not
body.
changing us. It's not that. So, yun, hindi siya ganun. It's
Pero
just there para matrain yung, in a safe way, matrain yung immune system natin na pag nagkaroon tayo ng COVID, alam niya na, uy, kailangan labanan to. But that's about it. Hindi siya yung papalitan niya ang katawan mo. Like yung mga takot ng iba, hindi siya ganun.
another possibility opened up by those who are against vaccines, or at least those uh, who don't believe in long COVID, is sinasabi nila na it's a hypochondriac, or like people are imagining these symptoms because yun nga, they got COVID, and na trauma na sila because of COVID, and so they're in their minds they are still sick, but it's not real because the tests, and they will point to these no, they will point to these tests as evidence na, oh, look, people get tested but they don't see anything wrong with them, so it must be something not imagined. Again, I want to bring this up because we are trying to be objective, and we hear this type of discussions from those who don't believe in long COVID.
There was an interesting study that came out around last week. No? What they did in the Netherlands, ginawa nila yung mga may long COVID, they made them ride on exercise bikes for 20 minutes, which is torture for us na may long COVID. And ang nakita na, and this is biological proof that things change when you get long COVID. Meron tayong parte sa katawan na tinatawag natin mitochondria. And this is a very important part of the body because this is where energy is manufactured in our body. Okay. Pag may problema ang mitochondria, ang buong katawan mo niyan bibigay kasi diyan ang source ng energy natin. Ang nakita nila, dun sa mga muscle ng mga may long COVID, nasisira yung mitochondria, and yung mga muscle mismo may problema. Nagkakaroon ng changes dun sa muscle na hindi nila nakikita sa mga taong nagka-COVID pero hindi nag-long COVID. Nakita rin sa ibang mga brain studies, for example, na ang mga may long COVID, nag-iiba yung brain structure compared to those na hindi nag-long COVID. sa heart, nakikita nila nagkaka-problem even sa again, mitochondrial dysfunction. Nakita nila na ang immune cells ng mga may long COVID nagkaka-problema to the point na napapagod. We call it exhaustion, T-cell exhaustion, and nagkakaroon ng problems with the mechanisms of immunity and the different kinds of lymphocytes. I won't get into the technicalities, no, but there are studies that prove mechanistically and biologically that this is not a psychosomatic illness. Hindi ako personally, I can't imagine how my heart rate goes up to 140 just by sitting down. That when I'm asleep, my heart rate never goes below, maswerte na akong 80 ang heart rate ko. So this is borderline upper limit. And mag-shower ako para akong tumakbo ng 1 kilometro or para ako nag-marathon. Nababagsak na lang ako. These are not imagined. And it's not consistent. May araw na okay ako. But when the crash hits, katulad ngayon, medyo napapagod ako magsalita na, hindi mo, hindi mo maintindihan saan nanggagaling. And now they're seeing it in molecularly and at a cellular level. Then that's why it doesn't even show on regular testing. Because ang nangyayari is, yung isang study sa Harvard nakita sa capillaries yung diferensya, na yung oxygen exchange at a capillary level nagkakaproblema. So, yung mga ganon, biological mechanisms yon. So, na you can't deny it happens. And this is actual proof from different studies. And it's being repeated over and over again. Napoprove ng iba-ibang studies. And on a cellular level, that's why I was even telling Dr. Roa kanina, we're seeing the possibility of cancer after COVID. Kasi nagkakaroon ng DNA damage and yung repair at the DNA level is impaired. So, yung ganong klaseng cellular damage, nagkakaroon ng ROS, nagkakaroon ng senescence, these are all precursors for cancer. And we're seeing that now. So it's a very complex disease. We don't understand where it's going. And ang nakita pa nga there was a study released 2 days ago, I think, na yung virus supposed to be natatanggal natin sa katawan natin yan. Yung mga may long COVID, ang nakita nila, yung mga, kumbaga yung mga basag-basag na pieces ng virus, siya sa katawan and nagfo-form siya ng tinatawag natin na complex na siya yung nag-trigger ng mga iba-ibang sakit ng pamamaga, ng what we call inflammation. So it's really a very interesting thing to study from this perspective. If it weren't so scary, it's really something that
So,
I don't know, we haven't encountered. Pati sa ipin, nakikita namin nagkakaproblema. May natatakot sila na pati buto na apektuhan. And yun na nga, from my end, orally, yung mga hindi gumagaling na singaw, nagkakaroon ng mga lesion sa bibig, natatanggal yung mga ipin, nahuhulog, hindi nila alam bakit. So, and nakikita nila yung mga nahulog na ipin, walang dugo. So it's devoid of blood. And this is, unheard of in people na walang problema prior to COVID. So, hindi namin alam.
so Doc Jet and Dr. Roa, I mean, so parang pag dinana ka ng COVID, at least for some people, yun nga, parang kang, let's say, parang kang dinana ng bagyo. Pero pag parang wala na yung bagyo, pero may natirang damaging effects, like you said, yung mga remnants, baka sila pala yung nagko-cause ng damage, you know. Yeah, I have a colleague who suggests or who said na yung COVID daw triggers the Epstein-Barr virus. So I just want to bring that up. Is that a possible pathway or explanation na parang there's the Epstein-Barr virus is parang activated or something? I'm not sure. I'm not an expert, so I didn't really get what he said. This was Father Austriaco who mentioned that. Dr. Roa, let me hear.
I heard that theory, and that is probably the basis why even before COVID, we have a few of these cases coming up, and describing the same things na yung sinabi ni Doc. They said, uh, and so there must be some commonality with the viruses in the past and this particular virus COVID. Whether that requires a persistence of the EPV or de novo the virus, the COVID virus itself can do it. We don't know for sure, but I also subscribe to that uh, hypothesis or theory that that maybe it's still related to the virus. That maybe there are still some in some parts of our body some discrete parts. No, and the body of the human person is not totally mapped out. I mean, even if they have the genome for that, uh, that and cannot be tested well. And sometimes, as mentioned, hindi mo matest yan kasi iba na yung mga particles or even the antibodies towards it na nag-cause ng pathology. But the thing is, as you mentioned, Doc Ido, there are those damages that results from the big damage before, and unfortunately, nagka-fibrosis na yung lungs, and it can be a terminal situation. But generally, it doesn't prosper anymore. Or, or there are really remnants of these things that continue to stimulate something, producing the manifestations that long COVID patients feel.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Roa. How about you, Dr. Jet? What?
Yung sa EBV kasi, there are studies that show no, na ang COVID can act, because we have viruses that we acquire na hindi natin alam. EBV, HSV, human HPV, sometimes CMV. These are things we somehow acquire for no reason. No? Because viruses are everywhere, let's face that fact. No? But kasi ang nakita nila, ang COVID has the ability to activate what we call latent viruses. So these are viruses that we acquire na natutulog sa katawan. Say, ang chickenpox. Ang chickenpox, pag nakuha mo yan, minsan tulog yan sa katawan. And pag bumaba ang resistensya mo, it activates, is what we call shingles. So ang nakita nila, ang COVID can actually reactivate certain latent viruses. Kaya siguro nasabi nung kaibigan mo na EBV ang nagko-cause ng long COVID. There was a study on that, and it's a possibility. And also because kaya rin nangyayari yan because nakikita nila ngayon, and this was a highly contentious argument for over 2 years, and it's slowly being proven na ang immune system ng after COVID changes. There was a study, in a very good journal, that showed na it lasts for even 8 months, and that was as of publication time. So hindi natin alam, may iba weeks lang, may iba months. So we don't know. Hindi natin alam, temporary ba to, permanent pa to. And this can cause a lot of problems kasi kung ang immunity natin naaapektuhan, kaya marami ngayon nakikita mo nagko-comment, ba't ang bilis ko magkasakit ngayon or ba't ang tagal ng sakit ko hindi matanggal? This is one of their suspicions that ang immunity natatamaan ng COVID. And ang argument na lang siya, and this is not even debatable anymore, it's just whether or not it's permanent. Yun na nga, and then autoimmunity, yun ang isa pa nilang iniisip na pag tinamaan ka ng COVID, yung immune system mo, nilalabanan ang katawan mo. So there are many theories about long COVID. And yun na nga, I think personally, as someone who studies pathology, I think it can be different for everyone. It can be persistence, it can be yung immune dysregulation. Ang iba sinasabi nila microclotting. Namumuo yung dugo. And may mga nakikita talaga na yun nga ang nangyayari. So iba-iba yan. Hindi natin masabi kung ano yung cause. And studies are coming out slowly. They're pushing for further research on this because ang dami talagang tinatamaan ngayon, especially in the West. Buti nga sa atin sa Philippines, marami pang nagmamask, no? Yung ganon. And it really helps. Kasi for you not to get long COVID is don't get COVID. Lang siya eh.
Yeah. So, Doc Jet, and well, we're almost out of time. We only have less than 10 minutes left. So, sort of wrapping up, pero siguro this is our, your last point for today. But I just want to mention, yes, this seems real, itong long COVID. What do we do about it given that ngayon, sabi nyo nga, konti na lang nagsusot ng mask. A lot of people have moved on from COVID. If I ask the common person, let's say, kunyari, friend ko, sabihin natin, di ba, wala nang COVID, it's done na because, vaccinated na tayo, ganon, and they don't hear about it anymore. Plus, to top it off, ako naman, nag-report pa rin ako ng COVID numbers even as recently as first week of January. But since nag-stop na yung Department of Health sa pag-publish ng COVID data, and before, they still had COVID data, kahit pakonti ng pakonti. Konti ng testing, konti ng cases, but I still do my best to publish it as public service. So nag-report pa rin ako, tumataas yung positivity rate. At least I can still see that. Ngayon, I don't have visibility anymore. I want to help, but there's no data for COVID. And people seem to have moved on. There's nobody complaining about it. And maraming ang sakit. May mga kaso, influenza-like illnesses. We don't know if they're all connected kasi dumaming sakit. And the incidence of HIV is also increasing again. So siguro as a last word, what do we do about this? Unahin ko muna si Dr. Jet, kasi alam ko napapagod ka na, and then si Dr. Roa. Dr.
Uh,
Jet.
yeah, it's for me. I keep masked because that's the best in places where there's really a high incidence or ventilation, clean the air. Air filters work great. If we want to live with COVID, we have to do it smartly because this isn't going to disappear and it's not getting any better. The virus is evolving. It's not our immunity. It so happens that there are many who are vaccinated, may mga nagkasakit. So the immune landscape is very different. But the virus isn't getting any better. If you look at how it changes, it's not getting any better. It in fact mas nakaka-evade siya ng immune system natin as it develops. So the best is to keep as safe as possible. And yun nga, before we end, no, even kids get long COVID. Nagkakaroon ng misconception that they don't. They do. There are studies already showing that humihina sa performance sa school, sakit sa chan, sakit sa ulo. And of course, you can't ask a kid, do you have brain fog? They don't understand these things. So as parents, we have to monitor kung nagkaka-physical changes or mental changes sa bata. Um, and yes, please do all your best to mitigate to avoid getting long COVID.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Jet, for your recommendations. And to add to that, on top of it na wala ng data, if I do try to extract data, and when we talk about these things, minsan we're being tagged as parang alarmist pa rin. Parang, hey, why are you still talking about COVID? Tapos na nga, di ba? Wala na nga nagano. Although I think meron pa rin nagmamask, konti na lang. I would estimate it to be baka 3 to 5%, which is the same number that we saw sa survey namin about how many, I mean, what are your urgent personal or national concerns? And 3% says COVID pa rin. I mean, which is surprising. Meron pa rin nagko-consider na COVID is a concern, even though it's a small number, 3% compared to 41% nung Delta virus, nung kasagsagan ng COVID. So, Dr. Roa, I mean, how about you? What's your
Yeah.
suggestion
Well,
for the
well,
viewers and listeners?
as far as the mask, I think there are actually more, pero katulad ko, hindi naman ako nag-report sa'yo, Doc Guido. So I think the other side of the mask is that the one who's sick should probably try to contain himself, if not add to the problem of disseminating. That should be very important if there's something that we remember of this presentation, because this is long COVID really is serious business. It's big problem. And the US actually has this fund, NIH, 1.15 billion fund to study the COVID, long COVID and its different facets. So and I understand from the you said that there are many other organizations trying to do this. And COVID diagnosis is already coded in the ICD-10. So it's real, it's serious, and we have to do our part to mitigate it somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Roa and Dr. Jet, for your time. Again, very important in discussion natin. Even though a lot of people have moved on and people don't think about COVID anymore, we admit marami tayong problema sa buong mundo, sa Pilipinas, our problem natin sa economy, inflation, maraming challenges. But we have to also still address our health concerns kasi health is wealth. And, this is our life, and I don't know what some people's beliefs are, pero we want to make the most out of our life. And ayun. So very helpful yung suggestions. Ako, of course, I would wish na meron pa rin tayong monitoring sa data, even though people have moved on. I mean, but that's part of adjusting to the new normal, di ba? As Doc Jet says, na if people want us to live with COVID, we have to be informed in. And part of being informed is to have the data so that we can make adjustments. At least kung nakikita natin na may spike ng cases, may surge, we can adjust accordingly. We can wear face mask. I mean, hindi naman ako hardcore na I'm always wearing face mask. But if I'm seeing a spike in cases, I do wear face mask when I'm outside sa mall. So again, parting words na lang, Doc Jet and Dr. Roa, if ano lang, like
Stay safe and
okay.
try to avoid. The game is not to not get COVID anymore because I'm sure by now marami na. But try not to get it. There are people who get it 3, 4 times in a month. The more you get COVID, the higher the chances you get long COVID. It's a game of Russian roulette. So try to avoid it if you can.
Thank you for your time, Doc Jet and Dr. Roa.
And if there is a guidance for vaccination, please have the vaccine too. The next booster, if that is so recommended.
Panawagan sa FDA and sa Department of Health. So that's it for this week, February 4, 5:58 p.m. Happy Sunday. This is Dr. Guido David, joined by Dr. Paul and Dr. Roa, Pinoy Scientist. Thank you. Happy Sunday.